That's been awesome. I was joking with folks that in this weather, we still run in T-shirts and shorts, so that's how crazy we are up in Calgary, Alberta. Anyone else from Canada? Anyone? One. I can see home. It's just across the bridge. I can get there. So I want to thank a couple of people here before we get going. First, the CXO Exchange. Thank you so much, folks, for inviting me to be part of your story today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that as we get through this session today, I get a chance to come back in the future. I want to thank all of the folks who are attending today. I understand that just a few blocks away, there's like tailgate parties that are starting to kick in. So I promise I'll get you out of here so you can go enjoy them. I promise. And then to all of you here, can I just quick show of hands, how many folks are here from universities or students attending today? Everyone put up your hand. Folks, can I get everybody else to look around? When it's time for us to get the hell out of this game, these are the folks we need to give the keys of the car to. So to the students, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. But I'm going to give you some homework in the session today. So today we're going to talk about some history and some of the stuff that I've gone through. And we heard today some amazing stories so far about artificial intelligence and the horror and the drama and the fear and the promise that is what AI is becoming. What if we take a look at that from a different lens? But I want to go backwards first. So a little bit about me. Let's start with this. Our HR department makes sure I do this every time I speak. That's my dog, in case you're wondering. Yeah, my dog is the HR department, so she makes sure that I do this. Before we get going, what the hell, let's get the nudity out of the way. Yeah, it's just the shirt, folks, I promise. It's just going to be the shirt. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm wondering what happened. I'm kidding. So this is as far as I can get with the nudity stuff. My wife won't be too impressed otherwise. But for the profanity, is everyone okay that I actually use the occasional profane word? You are just like every executive board I presented to. Thank you, I appreciate it. All right, now that stuff's out of the way, let's move on. A couple of things, I just want to talk a little bit about myself. Thank you for the lovely introduction. It was great to hear that. Thank you, yeah, I appreciate that. But this is really who I am. I am a husband first. So that's my amazing wife, Lisa. She keeps me in check and in line. She's working with me on a project that I'm doing for Talecraft Security. We're building, I know, our own agentic AI engine. Yeah, I get that. So I thought, this is fantastic. She does this for a living. I got free labor, right? Asked her, said, hey, can you help me with this? I have this great idea. This was back in June. She said, absolutely. Came back on the weekend, and she goes, and here's your homework. And I went, what the fuck, what? She goes, I'm not doing this. You're going to do this. So I've become an expert in JSON programming. Yeah, I'm 62 years old. Like, this shit's new, right? So I'm learning this. So she's forcing me to become a better person and a better CEO. So now I get a chance to understand how the engine works, which is super cool. I'm also a son. So this is a picture of my mom and dad from, I know, 1958. Sorry about that. But can anyone see the risk statement in this picture? Fireworks and lumber, yeah. And do you catch the smoke in my old man's hand? So my dad was in the Air Force at the time in Goderich, Ontario, and off base he needed to make some extra cash. So I don't know if you can see it really well, but on the top of the car, he bolted on a big blowhorn. And inside the front seat was a record player with a record that would talk about how great Franklin Lumber was and come buy your fireworks. That was his job, drive around the town and get people to go to the Franklin Lumber and pick up their fireworks. So I earned my reputation of risk management from a very early age, just saying. Next, I am a brother. So that's the three McCreight boys. I'm the one on the far or left-hand side. And you can see my older brother in the middle and my younger brother in the end. In Edmonton, Alberta, it was colder than Calgary, colder than here, and we weren't that rich. So for us in winter, the fun part was wait till the city plowed the streets with those really big, deep hunks of ice, bring those puppies into the backyard and build a fort. That thing stood till May in Edmonton, just so you know, right? My mom hated it, right? Because we had this big patch of grass that wasn't growing, but it was because of all the stuff that we built in the yard. I'm also a friend. Over the so many years I've been doing this, my career, I've had a chance to meet folks from all over the globe. And this was taken at GSX, which is our global security exchange. About 20,000 people show up every year for our security conference. This was the year that I was presenting, and I had a chance to interview George W. Bush. So it was awesome to have a chance to sit on stage with a president for an hour pick on him because he couldn't say our anthem in French, and really bug him because his baseball team was getting their ass kicked by the Blue Jays, just so you know. I am a dog lover and dog owner. These are our two girls. Hazel's on the left and Piper's on the right. So Hazel's a 120-pound bull mastiff, so she weighs 10 pounds more than my wife. I love Winter. When she walks the dogs, it's awesome to watch. When Hazel wants to go somewhere, she's just going. So I always let her take the big dog when we walk out the house. I'm that mean. And finally, I tell stories. Out of everything I've done in my career, this is really all I got left. But I explained it to my advisory board. The reason why I tell stories and go to sessions like this, it's part of what we do at Talecraft. It's to help and to give back, but to grow the profession of security. More importantly, this is my chance to feed the soul. Everything else I do for Talecraft, it makes money. This feeds the soul. And it's a chance to watch a group of students understand some of the stuff that we went through and set you folks up to become leaders in the future. So that's why I do this. Also, it's nice to get out of the basement, I'll be honest with you. It's nice. So I keep mentioning when I've been doing this for a while, so I want to ask the audience, can you guess when I started my career? And remember, this is when Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt and James Brady was shot on the head? Nobody? Oh, you're close. First launch of the space shuttle? You got to remember this, the first IBM computer. How about this one? Oh, okay, that's my favorite, the Canada Cup. So I love this picture of Messier with no teeth. It's perfect, right? Every good Canadian hockey player ever. And finally, this was important. Anyone? Year? We had it once. 1981. I got out of the Air Force in 1981. I ended up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I started my career in a hotel in downtown Winnipeg. I needed a job desperately. I drank far too much in the military. I owed $250 on the way out the door, and they were serious. Like, we're going to start, Tim, you got to pay your bill. So after I supped out, handed in my uniform, got a job, I needed something. So I found a position in the newspaper. Anyone remember what those are, newspapers? Yeah? Okay. In the want ads, okay, I'm going to date myself. In the want ads, it had security guard, and it showed how much it made an hour. I did the math quick. If I work for just 3 weeks, I can pay off this bill. That's awesome. 45 years later, here I am, still doing security. But what I loved about it is it started me off in this path to learn for my entire career, because everything I've done has been focused on how can I look ahead, how can I give back, and how can I grow. We learned that from kids in Edmonton. My mom and my dad were pretty strict from the military perspective, and they told us that if you're already out there shoveling the snow, carry on. You've got 2 more yards, one on either side. Same with cutting the grass. Why can't we help our neighbors do something else? My old man was a master mechanic, and every vehicle in that neighborhood ended up in his garage one time or another, and we'd do it for free. So now, how can we help set this generation up by looking at the things that we focused on in the early telco days? So this is a 3-act play, in case anybody's wondering. We're not taking a break partway through. 3-act play. First act, telco days. Yeah, anyone remember these? Anyone get the phone number on the rotary dial? Jenny 867, all right, I'll just let that go. I had to put it in there. We went from what was annoying at the time, which was telecommunications fraud. Because it was super annoying, it turned into crime, and we didn't catch it. And we let it go. That was the first thing in this act that we didn't do well. But how did we get there? So, a pop can tab, a payphone, and unlimited dial tone. Anyone remember War Games? Okay, thank you. There's a scene in this movie that we all hate Matthew Broderick for. Bastard. Anyway, moving on. He needed to make a phone call. He goes to a payphone, doesn't have any change on him, but he finds a pop tab. Takes the receiver off, grounds the pop tab into it, gets secondary dial tone, makes this call for free. Thankfully, no social media back then. Nobody was covering it on YouTube. Tens of millions of dollars later, we lost for toll fraud because every time we went to a payphone around Canada and North America, all you would see was pop tabs, paper clips, stick pins. Somebody figured out if I ground out the receiver against the ground inside the handset, I get secondary dial tone to the central office and I get to make a call for free. So we would see in some cities the amount of pop tabs was unbelievable. And we also knew that every time there was those pop tabs, that was 25 cents a phone call we were losing. Yeah. We didn't catch on to this, though. We weren't that sharp back then when we were dealing with security. A couple of things continued that we should have got better with. Innovation has outpaced protection. What have we learned so far today? What did you hear with all the AI discussions so far? What were some of the topics that we heard this morning? That's actually a question, right? I'm actually throwing out a question. If money is the origin or the drive, is security getting in the way? Most times, yes, right? The problem is that we want to be, we heard it this morning, you need to be first to market. You can't take 6 months to make a decision. You have to move fast. 72 hours is the average life it takes for changes to occur in a platform and an update to it, become part of it. Well, that time is unbelievable. But picture this happening now in the 1980s. Yeah, I keep dating myself. In the 1980s, my favorite, how many people remember, I'm going to ask the more senior folks in the room, how many remember calling cards when it came out? Yeah. Do you remember the first thing that everyone found on the calling card was your authentication code on the bottom right-hand side? Fantastic. No, not fantastic. There was an amazing test that was done in Chicago O'Hare Airport. I was part of it. I got invited down. It didn't happen often. I got invited someplace, but I got invited down to this. They took a clean calling card, and they put it on the far end of the O'Hare Airport. And all the person was asked to do is act as if you're an older person and that you needed your glasses to read your calling card. So they did, and they held it out about arm's length. 30 seconds later, that number is being used in a payphone across O'Hare. You know how big O'Hare can be. And then it's being used around North America. 30 seconds. Because I have the number, and then it says enter your auth code. And we were so polite and so innovative, everyone put the auth code right on the card for you. Yeah. It's like putting your password underneath your keyboard. Not that anyone does that ever, ever. That's what we were doing because we needed to be innovative and first to market. Damn the controls, we got to get out there first. And we paid for it, right? So after this little expose, I went back to my province, our provincial phone company, Alberta Government Telephones, and said, we can't do this. I'm like, Tim, we've already launched the cards. Oh, for God's sake, all right, bring them back. And they're like, what? Here, let me explain what happened. And the room got really quiet. And the marketing person's face got really white. And they went, yeah, we should probably pull them back. You probably should. Because we learned from that mistake, figured we'd get better at this, remote call forwarding came. Holy smokes, that got even worse. People figured out how to intercept it, redirect it, move the calls around. It was unbelievable. We actually had an entire company lose access to their switchboard through remote call forwarding. Yet they still had to pay all the long distance charges going overseas because we made them. Right? And my favorite. Yeah, see, everyone's like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah. We got really good at that too as kids, right? And we found that when I became a security investigator with telephone fraud, this was not cool. Because again, we're losing revenue because we opened up a solution for our clients and we forgot about the control, right? But yeah, we remember seeing this happen all the time. But this was the first part of it. It gets better. How many people remember when Hacker 2600 came out? Yeah. January 1984. What I loved about it is, and I actually still have a copy of this, what I loved about it is they talked about the charges that were being pressed against somebody inside a pizza place because they were stealing phone service for free, but because they were phone freakers, this is what they took this as their manifesto and off they went, and that thing's still around. Still around. Anyone remember where the name came from? 2600 was the Hertz to get free phone call from central office, and it was this god-awful red thing that came out of Captain Crunch cereal. Yeah, that's actually in the Smithsonian Museum, that little one. So hackers figured out if I blew the whistle into the receiver end of a phone, and I could eventually get secondary dial tone, and off I would go, right? Freakers came from phone freaks, right? Phishing has come from phone phishing. Hang on to that thought, right? Hang on to that thought. Yeah, Carla's laughing in the back because we've seen this stuff, right? It's because no one's got a unique name anymore. They have to borrow it from the old days. All of this stuff that happened, all of the things we had to deal with in the early 80s, it got dark quick. And what do I mean by that? First up, call cell operations. This was where organized crime stepped in. An individual would pose as the owner of a company or of a business, and they would then order as many services as they possibly could, as many phone lines as they possibly could, set the service up, and have no intent to pay. Back then, phone companies only billed every 28 days. You had 27 days to run the book. And you could do a lot of damage in 27 days. So I got involved with one, and we'll get there in a second, that changed the course of our criminal code in Canada as well. But that was the first instance where we're like, maybe we could have done better with this. The reason why is we didn't check as much as we should have. Who owns the business? Is it actually up, Jesus, is it actually up and running? That would be awesome. Can you show me a business license? Can you give me something to prove that you're running a business? But we accepted it because we wanted to be first to market and grow our market share by selling more lines and getting more revenue. But we forgot about the controls that we should put into place for every solution that goes out the door of any company. Voicemail takeovers was another fantastic one. I had a chance to spend time in prison for the right reason. For the right reason. Let's put that. Yeah, the tattoos only came from outside. No, I'm kidding. For the right reason. Yeah, I wanted to joke about the one on my back, but nobody will get this Spires of St. Petersburg reference, so I'll just let that go. Right? So somebody did. Thank you. That's perfect. Nobody watches Eastern Promises. Never watched that movie. Okay. I'll get some kids. You got some homework today. Eastern Promises. Go watch that. Right. Voicemail takeovers, prisoners have an awful lot of time on their hands. Imagine. And the only way they make phone calls is if they make them collect. So they have to call out, someone has to accept the charge, and you can carry on and have the conversation. So not everybody wants to get a phone call from a prisoner. Go figure. What they did figure out, though, is what if I could access your voice, or if I could try to get to your voicemail box, change the voicemail box password, and then just press the number 1 for 30 seconds, or say the word yes for 30 seconds. Back in the day, operator-assisted calls, all the operator needed to hear was the 1 being pressed or you saying the word yes. The charges would go through, and that voicemail box got stuck with the bill. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. Except when you're getting hundreds of millions of dollars in lost fraud, because the companies that were footing the bill for it still had to pay. Right? Back then in the 80s, early 90s, every time something happened, we went back to the scheme that we had in place, which was we created a tariff, which was, yeah, I'm Canadian, I said tariff. We created a tariff for phone companies, and our tariff was we provided services to the client. You were ultimately accountable for the charges to your account. That was it. Unless you filed a charge with law enforcement, the charge was yours to pay. So that meant we made lots of money on fraud where we shouldn't have. Right? Phone companies made tens of billions of dollars of profit on the backs of companies that were defrauded because we had a scheme in place that you had to pay. So when the voicemail takeovers took off and started making a lot of money, we made a lot of money too. So we didn't want to actually change things because we were making money. But that's when this happened. Terrorism and organized crime came in. The one call cell operation I had a chance to get involved with, it was called Project Coyote, and it was initially started here in the US. It was a group of 2 individuals from Lebanon that were traveling through North America, creating call cell operations, setting up the service so that local Lebanese communities could call back to Lebanon. They would take the money from those calls, send it back to Lebanon, and then they would bugger off and go to the next town. And they had it timed. 26 days, 27 days, shut everything down, go to the next town. Come up with a brand new company name, brand new service requirements. It was always 5 lines, multiple services, and the lines, when they were turned on, would run 24/7. The ads were published in local community newspapers, letting the Lebanese community know that if you come to this location during these times, you can make a call home for $10. Right? Because an hour-long call was in the hundreds of dollars. Anyone remember what happened in Lebanon in the early 80s? Civil War. Yeah, they were getting bombed back to the Stone Age back then. And Teleglobe, I sat on Teleglobe as a rep from AGT. We shut down the ability of Lebanon to make outbound calls because they couldn't pay their bills. The only way you could call into Lebanon was you making the charge. So that changed things, right? But this one instance in Edmonton, Alberta, we got a heads up that someone was coming in to set up this. So I got to play surveillance for a little while. I figured out my camera technique just sucks shit. It was horrible. I'm trying to take pictures with a camera of these individuals lined up around the block to get into an office to make phone calls to Lebanon. So we had enough to go get a warrant. We got a warrant. We shut them down at 10 o'clock at night the next night. And in the van, when we broke everything down, were $15,000 of cash that they'd collected so far for just that day. They had weapons. They had counterfeit U.S. currency. They had passports for all across the world. Went ahead and tried to interrogate them. They said nothing. They lawyered up right away. Terrific. Put them in the cells for the night. We went with Edmonton Police Service to charge the next morning. Laid the charge. Judge looked at it and he goes, "Who's really paying for this?" And we said, "Well, the phone company has to cover the loss." And let him out on bail. Thanks, Judge. That was awesome. These two were on a plane from Edmonton to Montreal in about an hour, and then from Montreal to Lebanon that day, and they were gone. The problem is that my name was on the warrant. My name was on the charge filings. And less than 3 days later, I had a white van parked 2 blocks away from my house, watching my house. Because these guys worked for Hezbollah. And that's where the money was going. Right? We saw this happen in the 80s, early 90s. And yet, we still let this go. Because this was the next one that came up. How many remember these little bricks? Carry on. Man, I had one and thought I was the guy, right? This was pretty awesome. Except whenever it rang, I'm like, oh crap, it's the boss. So this was the Motorola Dynatrack, the 3400 series. First phone call. Folks, remember when the very first cell phone call occurred? 1969. 1969. Using a cellular network, a phone call was made. These came out in 1984, right? So in 1984, we had our first cell phones, mass market. These were fantastic. They were out, people could use them, you could get a hold of somebody. You were actually able to communicate outside of your office, which was fantastic. Anyone remember some of the fun with the 1G network? I needed an ESN, electronic serial number, and a mobile identification number. I had to have them both in place, right? And once that pair was accepted by the cell towers, a phone call could go through. Terrific. It's just that you could have multiple combinations. You could have more than one instance of an ESN MIN pairing at any point in time. And my favorite part, it was unencrypted. Yeah. The market that kicked in for this, the fraud that started with all of this, the amount of times we had to deal with somebody whose phone number was being used overseas or in the US or in other parts of Canada. Because they were in Edmonton, why is my phone being used over here? It's because organized crime realized, oh my God, we could make a lot of money here. And my favorite, oh my God, we could make a lot of phone calls and no one's gonna know it's us. So every drug dealer, arms dealer, every criminal that we dealt with in the next 5 to 10 years had cloned cellular phones. So let's go back to phishing. What they did many years ago is you would see people standing right underneath a cell phone tower. And there was this Radio Shack antenna that would sit on their waist with just a collector unit. And that was their phone phishing techniques, because it was called a phishing hole. They would sit right underneath the cell phone tower. And every time an active combination of ESN, MIN came in, it was recorded in the box. They would take the chipset out of it, give it to somebody in the van. They would burn that information onto a brand new chip, pull out the one from the stolen cell phone, put in the brand new one, hand it over. You've got a brand new cell phone that someone else is going to pay for and no one's going to wiretap. Perfect for the bad guys. Sucked for us. It was so difficult to manage this problem because it took almost 10 years for what would become 2G networks to come in place, which then allowed encryption on the phones and RAND circular encryption to make sure that you couldn't pick up the ESN MIN. But in that period of time, billions were lost in fraud. We lost kind of how many times we couldn't get a warrant out because we didn't know the phone number. Right? We couldn't tell them. We came up with some really cool ideas, and you felt like Spider-Man halfway through it, as we would sit up on rooftops and follow the drug dealers with fish mics to try to figure out where are they going. Right? So you'd see a bunch of us up on the roof with these dish mics trying to figure out where's the drug dealer going. It was like Waldo, but from a rooftop, not quite the same. So it annoyed us because everybody who wanted the cell phone out on the market pushed it hard and forgot all about the controls we should have into place. kind of feels like AI, except 1984, right? So not quite. But this is where it starts, right? This is where we should have learned some of our lessons as security professionals, and we didn't, because the frauds caught up to us. It became geopolitical. We saw phone calls that were heading overseas from North American numbers, and the other way around. We saw a number of terrorist cells and terrorist organizations specifically target North American cells and numbers because they were hard to trace, and the technology wasn't available for people to catch up to them. And it was an open market to buy these phones. With that in mind, we ended up way behind. We heard this morning that foundations are important. Structure needs to be in place. Right? One of the presenters talked about making sure that all of your audit information was available and ready to go. I think that's terrific stuff to have in place. But when you're chasing systems and not criminals, you are always that step behind. We're there today. We can make it up, though, but we're there today. So we were already steps behind in the 80s when I was first getting into security. That's where we began. Yeah. So now, I know it's a little light to read, but 1969 is when ARPA first came out, right? ARPANET was the very first, people remember that? For the university students, if you get bored, look up ARPANET. 1969, first operational network that used an actual telecommunications network between universities for research and with the Department of Defense. The DARPANET was shortly thereafter, so it was Defense ARPANET. So they talked about really cool things on that side of the house. But yeah, if you get a chance, go back and take a look at ARPANET. That was 1969. So between 69 and 83, they decided what the TCP protocol stack would look like. And the 7-layer model of the OSI approach was grounded in practice in 1983. So we move over to 1990. That's one of my favorites, right? This is when we actually identified the structure for the World Wide Web, the octets of IP address ranges that would transfer traffic from one IP address to another IP address. For some of the folks who are more seasoned in their career, do you remember entering IP addresses to get to websites? Yeah. Do you remember screwing someone up going and ending up going, oh my God, I didn't mean to go there? Yep. Yeah, I remember that. I had that excuse in the internal investigation once. Tim, I entered the wrong IP address. Like 5 times? Okay. Let's go find HR and have a chat, right? So we found in 1993, this is when Mosaic, the browser, came out. 94 is when we actually launched the commercial. We got it ready to go. And 84 is when the web came out. And what I loved about it is the browsers that we had back then, what it did is it took the IP address, turned it into something prettier for us. At lunchtime, we were talking a little bit about where we have moved to in all of our technology. When you're thinking back to where we began, if we go back to the late 1930s, early 1940s, the concept of computing came out back then. And it's pretty simple. Input, process, output. That's how Enigma, the encryption program that the German army used, that's how it was broke in Blatchford Field. And even today, I challenge anyone, in AI, are we not doing the same thing? Input, I process, and I output. It just, if I look at AI right now, AI inputs like a baleen whale. It takes everything. The speed to process, because we've developed chips that are specifically geared for the algorithms that are required. But you heard this morning, it's still zeros and ones, and it's still math. It still needs to be processed. And then finally, the output, it's going to be pretty. Sometimes it's going to be an image. Sometimes it's going to be an entire book. Sometimes it's a podcast. But where has that cycle changed? It hasn't. Why are we looking at it any differently? We shouldn't. The risk has stayed the same. Computing processing hasn't changed since the 40s. Until you're going to get into quantum and truly get into something cool, we haven't changed that paradigm in a long, long time. But with this said, now this shit gets real, right? Because now the internet's here for everyone, good and bad, to use. Act 2 is when the gray hair starts. Somebody told me, at least you still have hair. Thank you, I appreciate that. It's just really, really gray. And if I keep it short, you don't see it that much. But the gray hair begins now. So now we're into the 90s. It's global now. Frauds can be instant, and I can scale. Right? So I can target not just your phone. I can target 10,000 phones or 100,000 phones. What if I can target 10 email addresses or 1,000 or 100,000? What can I do with that? How much fun can I have with this kind of scale? Because now it goes online. We talked about this morning. Some speakers had some great points about getting to market, securing market position, and making sure you're offering something to your clients, your stakeholders, et cetera, that others may do if you can't get to it. The issue with everything on the internet, though, and we're going to see this as we progress further into AI and next steps, is that that speed to market will always beat the control. Right? And for those of you who are thinking, but we have compliance, Tim. No, right, but compliance is not security. Right? So I want to make sure everyone understands that, especially for the university folks. Compliance does not equal security. Just because you're compliant, that's fantastic. Your mom must be really proud. But that means shit to the rest of the world, right? So, anyone remember the very first big email breach? AOL Online. Millions of emails were compromised. We don't even blink with that number anymore, right? But back then, this was trauma, right? This was, oh my God, the earth is stopping kind of stuff. Someone took over my AOL email. Nobody's telling me I have mail. Okay, I had to pick on sleepless in Seattle, really. But, if we do this, let's take a look at where everything starts. So anyone remember when that first floppy disk, that first virus that spread, when was that first brain virus? 83. 83. 2 years after the launch of the IBM desktop, MS-DOS. And remember MS-DOS? And then the fight that Gates had with MS-DOS after? Yeah, I'll let that go. So 1983, somebody figured out how to actually send a virus using SneakerNet. Okay, for the university folks, SneakerNet was when I would take one thing out of a desktop, use my sneakers to walk to another one, and then plug it in. That was called SneakerNet. Was that subtle enough? Did I get that right? Yeah, all right. So SneakerNet was what started the spread of this virus, right? My next favorite one is in 1988. This is when it came out with the Morris worm, right? So Morris was an individual who decided, this is something I'm going to test. It's just for education. Bullshit. And it became something that was catastrophic for North American computers. Now the fun starts in 1999. The Melissa virus hits on email, and it was called list.doc. And as soon as you clicked on that and you opened it up, it took off and damaged your machine. It got to the point where the Department of Defense, the Ministry of Defense in the UK, and Department of National Defense in Canada shut down their computer networks because of the infection inside it. Fun little fact about the Melissa virus, it was named after an exotic dancer that the author was really sweet on. There's always a link to porn somewhere in security. There's always this link. And then finally, the I Love You virus came out, and it was, could you just click on this link and pictures of, right? And it took off. So we started seeing some of this stuff already. And we started seeing some of the catastrophic events that occur because of this. I was involved in a couple of different recovery teams that did postmortem reviews of these two events that happened in particular. I got invited to help out with the RCMP and Department of National Defense, and we took a look at some of this stuff, and what was the impact? So I want you to think, when I bring up these items on the screen, are these still relevant today? Trust is the real attack surface. Make sense? Default permissions can hurt us. Okay. We also identified in 2000 that connectivity multiplies the impact. Who would have thought that? Oh my God, many machines were connected on a network. Every one of them was infected. What the hell happened? I'm being dramatic, but speed, the speed of the spread of a virus means that we have to be more prepared. Absolutely. And then finally somebody thought, Tim, do you think partially behavior could impact this? Yes, sir, I absolutely do. He was a ranking officer in the military. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, yes. I believe that human behavior is still the first line of defense. And my favorite, recovery and resilience always win. 25 years ago, we said this shit. Is it still relevant today? Then why haven't we worked on this? 25 years. I've been beaking off about this for a quarter of my life. Okay, not really a quarter, but anyway, for 25 years. I'm assuming the students are not 25 years of age, but for most of us in the room, that's a big hunk of your career. What happened? Why are we still stuck in this space where we are having discussions about, I need to go make friends with other departments? I need to get someone to help back me when I get into a boardroom to talk about the work we need to do as a company. I need to focus on a better way to talk about the problems that we're facing in our organization. And how can I get us better prepared? Because apparently recovery and resilience will win. Yeah. Because now we're in the age of a breach. This diagram came from, if you get a chance, it's just an amazing website. Information is beautiful. One of my best places to go for data and also the representation of data. This was taken from 2024 in December, and it's the top 500 passwords in pictogram form of everything that's been pawned in 2024. Can you see the biggest password? I look at this and the first question I ask is, does anybody in the room have any of these? Please don't raise your hands. Please don't raise your hands. Seriously? That was last year. I'm waiting for this year. It's like, apparently Jennifer was a big name. Jessica, Batman, really? Well, Superman, the movie came out in 2024, so yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. Password from War Games. Thank you. Thank you. That was a very good reference. I appreciate that. That was awesome. Thank you for that. But this is where we are, folks. We still have people using password for a password. At least, for God's sake, do something a little more authentic. But no, we still have password. In this age of a breach, this is where we are, right? Yeah, everyone's going to look at this for hours, right? So, okay, look, I have to move now. I got to keep moving, right? So I only got like 20 minutes left. I got to keep moving. But with this said, and with behavior as who we are as human beings, so identities now become fluid, right? Do I actually know it's you? Can you prove it? Well, no, try it again. Why do you think we're getting to the place now where zero trust is going to be key? Where your identity has to be foundational for everything that we're doing. I need to know that it's you that I'm talking to, and you that I'm working with, or you that's actually giving me input or data, etc. Right? With that, now that we have this concept of identity, crime as a service. This is fantastic. My favorite is the last line. This guide contains everything you need and more. Please note that because it contains hacking tools, it may be flagged by your antivirus. Don't worry, your computer will not be harmed. Trust us. So this was from one of the sites just before I got took down in 2017. They were selling tools to break into crypto mining. These guys made hundreds of millions before they got shut down. Right? But crime as a service now, this is something that we've been focused on and we are focusing on here within Talecraft. And I did before I created Talecraft. From a threat intelligence perspective, how many people know that, not the absolute, but a pretty close value of what the dark web has brought for revenue in just a year? The last data that we have is last year, 2024, we estimated the amount of money, the revenue, profit on the dark web is $11 trillion. Let that sink in, $11 trillion. That is more than the gross domestic product of Japan and Germany combined. It's the third largest economy in the world. It just falls slightly lower than China at 12 trillion and just a little bit lower than the US. That's T with a trillion. That's like Musk's revenue for a year. Anyway, I'm just kidding. How the hell did we get here? That these guys are making more money than God. Right? It's because they're relying on everything we're doing by pushing something out the door even faster than our competitor. And relying on the idea that every human being in our world is inherently lazy and wants the simple way out. How many people have multiple passwords for every application that you own? Okay, we need to talk. There's a therapy group after this, right? How many people use the same password for multiple applications? Don't be shy. Okay, you almost did. Oh, almost. We're still stuck with passwords. Literally 40-some years later, we're still using passwords. But with this, we've learned that everything now is an entry point. How many people have more than one network-connected device in their home? I'm looking for the typewriters in the room, but nobody, right? So I did a check just before I came here. So I have a system that monitors my entire home network and tells me that something comes on, goes off, and everything is clean. I have 26 IP-enabled devices in my home. 26. I'm not going to give you my address. I'm not going to tell you. This scares us, though, right? How many people have connected their washer and dryer to the internet? Why? Stop. Why? You don't need to. You're not going to tell people how you're washing your clothes. For Christ's sake, stop. But isn't this what we want to have as consumers? Choice. Would you buy the internet-enabled washer and dryer or just the washer and dryer? Oh man, this internet-enabled one sounds really cool. You mean my fridge can tell me when I'm running out of something and order it from the groceries with my credit card and it'll be delivered here? Can you see the risk there? And that was just 5 feet of walking. But anyway, let's move on. With all of this, it gets better. Because it isn't just the threats, it's the complexity. How many of you have multiple operating systems in your home? Yeah. Let me guess, Mac, Windows, anyone got Linux, Ubuntu, anything else? Yeah, okay, there we go. So there's a therapy group for us too later, right? We'll talk about this. It's like Ubuntu was so close, but we'll move on. The complexity though, how many of you working in organizations today still have legacy applications that have mainframe? Mainframe. Couple? Okay, we really need to drink later. We'll go for a drink. How about old operating systems? Standalone systems. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, see, now we start to commiserate. The pain of an application that has to run on its own. And for God's sake, Tim, don't patch that. It has to run like it is. This is how we ran a dam in northern Alberta on Windows NT. This box had been sitting there. It was to the point where we couldn't buy old keyboards anymore because they were so dirty. It's all the technician guys were like, but we're used to this. We just want to keep working on it. Dude, it's Windows NT, for Christ's sake. No, but it's working. And to be fair, all the commands were close, open. We're like, well, but is it attached to the internet? The what? Yeah, all right, you're good. Yeah, you're good. How do you protect the room? Well, we lock it, and Bob's got the key. Okay, I guess we'll consider out of control. Yeah, let's call out of control. They didn't want anything complicated. They didn't want Wi-Fi. They don't want email. They don't want anyone to know they're there. They use that place to rest. Fair enough. No cameras, no sensors, no card access, nothing. A Windows NT box and a dam with a couple of million gallons of water every minute behind it, and all they have to do is go open and close. But the rest of us aren't in that world, right? How many of you have access to your car right now if you had to remote start it? This is Detroit. You guys got to have remote start, right? All right. Can you imagine, though? Now you got to balance all of this and then tell eventually the marketing team we can't roll out the door with something because it's too complex. How's that discussion going to go? What if I can give you some things to make it better? And we'll start with this. We can't patch our way out of this shit anymore. Sorry, we can't. So we need something better. We need a new model. We need to look at this concept of security and resilience and assurance from a different lens and a different perspective. I'm going to give you this. So enterprise security risk management was born just out of this frustration. How did that begin? Well, first up, we're almost at the last act, right? But to begin that, I want to start with this. Good friends of mine at Alert Media, they created this. And I don't know whether they were joking because this was the last 25 years of my life, but it's pretty close. So in the early 2000s, a group of us were getting, we were having a therapy session in Washington, D.C. It was in January, and we were there for one of our big security meetings before our leadership meeting. And a group of us started sitting in downtown in one of the bars, and I started beaking off by being Canadian and that this wasn't really winter because D.C. doesn't get winter, at least not from my island. And they said, but, we went back and forth, and somebody said, you're just like some of the boss have to deal with. And I went, really? Sarcastic and Canadian? No, right? No. And then we talked about how bad it was. That just kept going. Finally, there was 20 of us sitting around this table, and we're like, this is just bullshit. And we kept talking about how we couldn't get in front of executives to talk about risk because we were stuck in this quagmire of technology. So that was in the 2000s. 2005, that same group of us got together, and we created this Alliance for Enterprise Security Risk Management. It was a chance for ASS International, ISACA, and ISSA to come together and formally create a different approach to security. Where now, what if we looked at security from a different lens? What if we could speak to security from a risk perspective and a business value perspective, as opposed to saying no? Out of curiosity, how well does saying no go in any conversation with any executive that you have? Yeah. Does it work well at home as well? Yeah, because it doesn't work for me. But how many people have kids? Is no the first word you hear? Yeah, pretty close. So what we did is, once 2005 came through, we selected Booz Hamilton, and they did this terrific white paper. It's still out there. You can still find it. So AESRM lived. But more importantly, from 2000 till about 2005-06, the three big players worked really well together. About 2007-08, shit hit the fan, and egos took over, and all of a sudden this thing died. But not for all of us. There was a small group of people who, like little underground warriors, we kept teaching this stuff. So I went back to, I had to go back to my slides. 2007 was the first class I taught on risk management. 2008 was the first formal presentation to a group like this that we gave. So then I kept doing this from 2008 onward. 2009, I became the Chief Information Security Officer for the Government of Alberta. So I was a named officer of the Crown, and I brought in ESRM, and the first thing people did was, what? And I said, this is simple. From this point forward, we don't sign shit. We don't. It's never been security's job to accept or sign off on risk. How many people have been forced into that space in your careers? Where you like, sign this because this is security's problem. The first question I now ask anywhere we go, if I don't sign this or accept this, will the risk activity stop today? Try that next time. If I say no, will the project stop? Well, no, Tim, the website's already launched. Oh, so I'm not the guy. You just need the scapegoat guy. I'm not that guy. But from 2007-08 till about 2011, we put this in place at the Government of Alberta, and we started winning awards. I got interviewed for a magazine article. I was asked to start writing articles about risk management. And then in 2015, I was invited down to San Francisco by ASS International. And they said, well, Tim, why don't you come down and help us do the strategy for the next 4 years? Sure, free flight to San Francisco in the middle of winter. I'm in. This is perfect. I get down there, and on day 2, because a group of us on day 1 decided we were going to sit in the same kind of bar scenario and get all angry again, and we did. Which is what we're okay to do with security people, is you can get angry with friends, just not angry at anybody else. We got angry. I got hungover. I woke up, and I was pretty cranky on day 2. So the first thing I brought up was I started beaking off, said, look, we started this ESRM thing like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Where did it go? And then everyone talked about egos, and they didn't want to run it. I said, so let's try it again. But let's do it better this time. And they accepted it. So in 2016, Dave Davies signed off on the idea that now ESRM is going to be the foundation of our approach to security management moving forward. I was invited to the board of directors. I took over a role from the board, and I was handed the opportunity to go build ESRM on behalf of ASS International. 2017, I stood up a commission. 2019, we launched the very first global standard on how to build an ESRM-based program. So yeah, the last 25 years of my life has pretty much looked like this, because in 2023, I became president of ASS International for the year. So I've been very proud of the work that we've done to get to this point, but mother of God, 25 years? Yeah. Who was talking this morning? Somebody said this morning, if you wait 6 months or more to make a decision, you're out of it. Yeah, we took 25 years to get here. But there's a faster and better way to look at it once you understand the basic principles. We were kept looking for this golden key in the desert. Right? There's got to be a way to unlock all these problems. Well, first we had to get rid of this culture of avoidance. In your current organizations today, how many people do you have that readily put their hand up and accept risks on behalf of the company? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is where we are. As human beings, how often do you readily accept risk? For those of you who drove here today, did you accept the risk of driving here? Yeah, you made decisions, you altered your path, you moved from one street to the next, you made it here safe and sound. Can you ask a company to do the same thing? Absolutely. Will they? No. No, they will not. Every executive I've spoke to said, if I accept that risk, I'm responsible for it. Yeah, Sparky, you sure are. Not me, right? Not security. We kept focusing on technology. For almost my entire career, we focused on technology as opposed to the human that's going to use the technology. And that kept this legacy thinking alive forever and ever, amen. until we had to put a stop to it and find a better way. So this, I think, is the better way. What if I align the security risks with what the business actually values? What if I could have a meaningful business conversation with executives to talk about risks that are facing the organization that could impact their goals and objectives? And what if I did it like this? This is the simplified version of what we launched in 2019. I have explained this to executives in a bar on a napkin in a minute. It's 4 boxes. It begins and ends with the business, right? We security professionals are in our jobs because a business actually is operating. Our job is not to run the business. We lost the right to say no a long time ago. That is not who we are now. Our role is to be a trusted advisor to the organization, a subject matter expert on security risks that could potentially impact the organization. And we need to be able to provide meaningful responses to the risk scenarios we uncover by collaboratively working with the business. And it starts first with the business. How many of you in this room have read your last 5 years SEC file reporting or strategic plans for your business? I got 2, 3. Why aren't all of us doing that? Can you tell me, when we go back out there in the social session, what your company does in 30 seconds or less, or why your company exists today? Can you tell me the role that you play to enable that every day? Because that's what we need to do as security professionals. What I told my team members to do with every role I've had as a CISO or CSO is your very first job is to read every strategic plan from every business department. Go. At the government of Alberta, that was 28 ministries. That was 1,000 and some pages of stuff to read. But it's because we needed to know the business, why they exist, and how the money that a taxpayer gives to the Alberta government gets used to provide us service. Once you understand what the business does, then you can start having discussions about what assets do you need every day to be in place. If this isn't available, what's the impact to your organization? That begins the process of understanding risk. And risk scenarios that we've gone through, risk assessments, even risk discussions have been as simple as what if? And an hour and a half later, we have some pretty cool discussions going on. But we don't do it in a vacuum. Earlier today, you heard that we need to speak to these things from our different friends across the organization. I want to take that a step further. In every organization I've designed security programs for, including this past 6 months or so, the goal is to have your security program and those individuals who are going to help you as part of a continuous foundational piece of governance. So whenever we do risk assessments, it isn't just us. We bring in HR and legal and finance and operations, sometimes real estate, sometimes other departments, but that core team stays because their perspective is different than ours. Our goal is to bring in as many different perspectives as we can and understand what the risks are, because the next part of that is the mitigation. Now we're going to help design strategies to reduce the risk. And they may be everything from putting in new policies and standards, to selecting new technology, to simply acknowledging that that program is going to have to move forward with the risks that it has today. And that's okay, because that's a business decision. We go right back up to the top. Everything that we uncover in that cycle goes back to business leaders, not security professionals, business leaders. We don't set strategy for the company. We don't allocate budget for the organization. We do not present to shareholders. But we are there to ensure that we can, that company stays operational by the work that we do. And within that foundation, we use open and transparent approaches and communications. We are holistic in our approach, so our security risks could be anywhere in the organization. It's our job to uncover them and then present them to the organization so they can understand what the risk is and then make a business decision. Have anyone here actually reviewed what is the ISO 31000 framework for risk? It's one of my favorites because I sat on the committee to identify what its structure was. It took us a couple of months to argue one line, and it's the definition of risk. It's the effect of uncertainty on objectives. That was it. Not positive or negative, because risk can go either way. It's the business to decide what that risk is going to do. This is what we teach at Talecraft, and this is what I've been designing for the past 20-some years. And it works, but it's work. It's work. Because when we go through this, the clarity of the approach that we take, it generates action. And I've watched this. In past lives, when I would present to executives at board levels, we would lose them in the first couple minutes. My favorite way of describing it is, I don't know if you remember the BlackBerries, but if I saw an executive go down to their BlackBerry and start doing this, I've lost them. We used to call it the BlackBerry prayer. So if I was giving a presentation and I lost people like this, I would stop because they're no longer interested in the shit I had to say. But if we can create a clear approach to what the risk is, and more importantly, what the business needs to do with the risk, then the discussion gets far more interesting. Because now I'm asking for action. Please decide if this is a risk you are going to accept. Because you are the business leader. I am not. Right? We also have to understand that storytelling now is a strategy. How many people remember stories from when they were a kid? Good, the gin and tonic hasn't gotten that bad with me yet. I still remember some of them, right? But the problem is when we have been giving presentations throughout the decades, we started creating FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The frighteningly large numbers, I'm just going to show the executives the firewall log to show them how much traffic comes into the business. They don't give a shit. They don't care. We teach security professionals and others the stuff you learned as a kid, that 3-part arc to a story is all you need to present to a group, to executives, to board members. My favorite is that within 3.5 minutes, I collected $6 million and a chance to come and present to the audit committee every month when I was at Suncor Energy. I just used 3 slides. I just talked about something that meant to them. The risk wasn't mine to carry, it was theirs. But we need to tell it as a story. So this is what we do, and this was one of the many classes we taught last year, is how to tell a story effectively and call to action from executives. We've had real wins, right? We've done everything from increasing budgets to establishing partnerships, developing stronger governance across an organization. We've really engaged and taught security professionals who use this model that your job is to go out and make friends. Get to as many different departments as you can, take people out for coffee, and the question you ask is, how can I help? And what do you do for the organization? Because those two things are linked. Right? We do not tell people what to do. We ask, how can we help? And finally, that level of trust that we establish between us and teams, that's how we overcome the obstacles that we all face, is we build up that level of trust. So this is what we ask executives to look at. Whether you're in security, whether you're in finance, operations, HR, legal, doesn't matter. But at that boardroom table and every executive decision that you're going to focus on as a C-level, we ask, can you for once focus on risk? Let's have a meaningful conversation about risk to the enterprise and how we can help resolve it. We demand now clarity. And CXOs should be asking for the same thing. Every CFO, CIO, CTO, et cetera, should be asking very clear questions of their security team, of the risks that are being uncovered and what we can do to reduce those risks. For once, just for once, could somebody define a risk appetite and put it on paper? I'd just show of hands, how many people have a clearly defined risk profile in your current organization and gets updated every quarter? Then you and I really need to talk, because there's like one in a room of all of you. It's because people avoid this like the plague. This is just business. Right? This is just business. But when they do not define risk appetite, they avoid the concept of risk. We can't do that anymore, especially when we face things like AI, and especially when we're going to be facing quantum shortly thereafter. Could you also be accountable for the risk? When we assign a risk statement, when we ask business to be part of this solution, we're asking business to now be accountable for it. We will do our part, but they need to do theirs as well. And finally, let us tell our story. In this room, how many of you have the opportunity to present to your board of directors or executive every month? Okay. 1. Don't you think it's important now that we actually update executives on a regular basis of the risks that we're facing at an enterprise level in the market, in the globe, in the scenarios that we're looking at today? And if we are not presenting, why not? Why aren't we having an opportunity to tell this security story? to get executives engaged with the risks that we're facing, and more importantly, the solutions that we're presenting so you can make a business decision. That's what we should be getting to. So look, fraud's going to evolve. Crime, all of it's going to keep moving, and it's going to get faster. It's going to shift, and we know that because we've seen it. I've seen it in the past 40-some years of my career. It's gone from pop tabs at payphones to dealing with AI and everything in between. And then finally, we are always going to be here to enable the business. Always. That's our job. Enable the business. Thank you. We got time, right, folks? So are there any questions? Does anybody need to quickly leave and tell their boss I'm quitting? Anyone? Yes, sir. You quit? You, anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. It was, yep. Correct. Like everything, before it launched, that solution had the time. The reason why is that it was tied up from the time it was established in the labs and the first cell phone call was made to the time that the licenses were granted, the cell phone infrastructure was built. Because remember, they had to build an entirely new infrastructure on top of what existed today. Also, every phone company was fighting it because plain old telephone system, the POTS lines, were still God. Right? Money was made with POTS lines. They looked at cell phones as a nuisance first, and that it was something, oh, that's really pretty, but it isn't going to stick. It's like when the internet came out. That's nice. Really? In that time, though, the legislation that they had to put into place and the infrastructure that had to be set up, tested, and established, it took probably 20 out of those 25 years. Yeah, the rest was just ego and noise, and people not looking ahead. Anyone else?
Other questions?
Did it make sense? In 40-some years, this is why I really want a typewriter and a flip phone. I'm done, or like I'm truly done. But it's because we have a chance to do better. We're standing on the threshold of a solution that's been launched about 3 years ago that is going to dramatically change the approach that we take as an organization moving forward. Whether you use AI as a chatbot because you want to change your flights, or you want someone to write your report for your boss, and everything in between. But if we don't get this right now and start focusing on risk instead of technology, we are going to be just as bad as we were when I was looking at a bunch of pop tabs by a payphone. Do you know what our solution was back then? What if we super glue the receiver onto the phone? Brilliant. There is no super gluing in the world we're in today. We can't patch our way out of this anymore. We have to look at this as risk. And how are we going to manage the risk? Can you explain it? Can you define it? Can you find examples to reduce it? And can I get my business to understand it, accept it, and move forward with me to solve it? That's where we have to get to, and we don't have a lot of time anymore. Yeah.
So we identify risk,
Mm-hmm.
and we present it,
Yep.
someone accepts it.
Yep.
Are there documented examples where organizations accepted risks that ended up leading to security incidents, and the security team didn't get blamed for it?
I have an entire other presentation on the stuff that I've presented where it actually came true. And yes, we were not blamed on a lot of it. And the reason why is that I document the hell out of everything. But I also made it very clear that I'm here to help. So no, not once in my career have I put my hand up going, I told you so. That's just a way to get fired. The best way to do this is as if a risk does unfold. And as you explained, it's unfolding just the way we described it. Shouldn't it have been on you to come up with the path to be resilient if that did occur? Remember, in that diagram that we had, in the 3 boxes that we own as security professionals, we own incident response, continuous improvement, and postmortem reviews. If I think a risk is going to be realized, the first thing I should be doing when I get back to my crew with that signed off risk assessment, map out what happens if A happens. If this shit goes sideways, what are we going to do? So that's what I've done my entire career. I'm a big Plan B kind of guy. In fact, I wanted my company to be called Plan B Consulting, but somebody grabbed it. So the goal was, look, we just got to sign risk acceptance. Awesome. If this happens, now what? And then I would throw it into the room with the folks with a bunch of Jolt Cola and whatever, and they would come back with and here's the plan. Thank you. Every risk assessment we do, we have to have what if, our response to what if. How many people are big fans of design thinking? Oh, you guys. If you get bored, design thinking, please go onto the Apple Store or take a look at it. It's the Brown Book of Design Thinking, probably one of the best books I've ever spent no money on. I think it's so free. And it describes the concept of I'm going to fail fast, fix it, fail again. It's a continuous, iterative approach to understanding the design principles. My favorite example of design thinking, IKEA. For over 60 years, IKEA has used design thinking principles. If you can take a big sofa and shove it into a square box, awesome. I'm impressed. But it's because they allow their companies to fail, but fail fast. Find a way to fix it, test it, fail again. So in all of the teaching that I do, design thinking is one of the things we bring to the case. The other one, how many people have heard of OODA loops? A couple. So in 1968 to 72, a group of behavioral psychologists were testing the theory that pilots in the Vietnam War, the American pilots in Vietnam War, were 10 times more efficient than their adversary. And they kept trying to figure out why. And it's because the pilots were taught to observe, to orient, to decide, and to act. And then repeat that process, but faster and faster. And finally to the point where OODA now takes fractions of a second instead of a second. In everything we do in security, we need to start embracing that concept of OODA. In our world with AI, you don't have time anymore. You have to start observing, orienting, decide what you're going to do, and act. Make sense? I'm actually here till tomorrow. I can say that. I'm here till Friday. Yeah, I'm just going to hang around. If you guys got questions of that, please let me know. But again, thank you so much for letting me be part of the story. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Everyone, give Tim a great round of applause. Can you throw up the slide that has the survey? Is it possible? All right. So we absolutely need you guys to fill out the survey. I'm going to let you go once you've said you've done it. This is how we make these better. This is how we find out, was it great? Was it something that you would like better, different? Awesome, really appreciate it. And the advantage I think today, from what Tim said, is we not only have the tools that are adversarial against us, but we could use that for us. We can use AI to help us fight back against it. And so it's a two-way street, right? It is an arms race, and we need to embrace the tools that we have, and we need to go forward with it. So it's kind of a great time to be in cybersecurity. So next we have our networking break. It is provided by Wiz. Please enjoy, go mill around, talk to folks, and then we're going to be back here at 3 o'clock for Stronger Together on the panel. So we have about an hour, a little bit over an hour, to go take a networking break. So finish your surveys, and then please, everyone, thank you very much, Tim, and thanks everyone for hanging out. Appreciate it. Great job.
All we can do is hope. I'm not the only one yet. Yeah. And I just borrowed for your guys' stuff this morning. That's it. Yeah. I remember it.